Welcome to Money on Tap. Money on Tap, your personal finance headquarters, where we bring out the professionals' experience and some fun in what we call three-dimensional investing, utilizing insurance, brokerage, and fee-based planning. That's what we do on this show. We look at all sides of the issues, and we bring a fully independent planning perspective to the table. Welcome to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. My name's Seth Krussman, and I am joined here once again by Dan Mickelin and Ben Brayshaw. How are you guys doing today?
Doing great.
I'm doing well, Seth. 2021's in the past, and
first snow day of the year.
Yeah, big snow. We got big snowfall here today. Yeah.
Wow. We had our snow day here when it was Christmas break, so I guess that was nice. We had a white Christmas. I think the kids are more excited about missing school for a snow day than anything else.
Remember when you used to sit in front of the TV and watch the scrolling school names?
Oh, yeah. Hadn't thought about that for a long time.
Yeah.
I was always disappointed to see, Watertown, the surrounding towns, they're out, but we're in. Just miserable.
We were usually the little bit lower elevation, little warmer area here, too. Everyone around us was missing school, and we had to go. You guys, we got a show today for you. Besides snow, we're going to be talking about no pension, no problem. And as a matter of fact, this is going to wind up being several shows for you, for those connoisseurs of consistent income, wanting to know how to retire successfully, and all the ins and the outs around that. We're going to put together a series of shows here for you to become educated and comfortable with this idea of what is this pension? Why would you want to have a pension in retirement? With so many different factors around us, like just a market that has done tremendously well. That's going to be part of our conversation, why people want to consider these types of options for their retirement, especially at the end of or tail end of a market that has done incredibly well. This is it's well-timed, it's well-placed, it's appropriate. And it is the No Pension, No Problem shows that we're going to head up for you. But before we get going on that and start talking more about snow, it's time for Money in the News. Guys, I was excited to be able to have this segment in Money in the News because it's a favorite around our house. I don't know about you guys, but it's Apple. Apple hits a $3 trillion valuation. And this is the first ever, right? And it has tripled over the past 4 years. And analysts even say that it's got more room to go. But regardless, Apple is one of those stories that I think we just love to talk about. Somebody starts with a great idea out of their garage and turns it into this international $3 trillion valuation company that if you haven't heard of them, I don't know where you have been, but yeah, Apple is a pretty big name around these parts.
I think that's literally impossible to be unaware of Apple at this point. And it's
in like the top, it's equivalent to one of the top 5 economies on the globe. Size-wise as a company. So, it's really it's just kind of tremendous in an awe-inspiring sense, I think, is what Seth's trying to say on some level, right?
At some level.
Yeah, it's just like, holy smokes, what's going on here? So, and then the question we always get invariably is, well, should I buy or sell Apple? Like, where are we at with this company? And it's like, how much bigger is it? A $4 trillion company? I think Apple does have room to run, but I think there's points in time where maybe just maybe it's time to diversify a little bit more. Because, one thing that, I've been chatting with clients who have owned Apple for literally a decade plus and have made an unfathomable amount of money having owned and held it as a stock is diversification. When you make money, don't be afraid to take profits. I think that's the one thing that I get from the idea of Apple. I mean, I've taken profits recently in Apple and just said, you know what? I'm never going to hit the top. Is it going to hit 199? Is it going to hit 250? Yeah. Is it going to go back down? I mean, that's one thing Apple does have is it has its swings in the market. That's one thing I do see in it historically.
Yeah, like any other stock, it's going to be up and down, but to celebrate the size and the scope of it is certainly worthy of the money in the news segment here. But it goes back to the old adage, and we've talked about this a number of times. You never feel bad about taking a gain, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, if you're in it and you're up and you're looking for other opportunities, we can certainly discuss that. But as a buy and hold, if you're already in it and have been in it, probably wouldn't argue too hard there either.
I want to repeat that because I think that's true wisdom, Dan, is never feel bad about taking a profit.
No, yeah, you never go broke that way. If you're always skimming the gains off, you'll always do well.
Next up, we've got something that's probably not too surprising to some of our listeners, but it was interesting to us as we were kind of going through the news clips and so forth, is that more young people are buying life insurance because of COVID-19. It's probably not a big surprise in the idea of it actually happening, but the numbers are kind of a little overwhelming, actually. Privately held Mass Mutual, which logged a more than 20% rise in the first quarter sales, and Prime America saw a 16% in the first 3 months of the year in the purchase of life insurance, which is not really surprising in the ideas of a pandemic and the fear of it. The captivating piece here that came from Yahoo Finance, Alexis Christoforous wrote this article, was that the people under the age of 44 years old was a large growing percentage of the people who actually were seeking insurance. And having some knowledge in the background of the insurance world, I thought this was interesting because they said that the average cost of the amount of insurance that people were buying actually declined. So that was an interesting tidbit. I think it was like the average policy was like $267,000 or some number. The piece about that I think is interesting is that, we had some people who were doing some estate planning in the life insurance space this last year or two, and different companies actually turned off the ability to buy life insurance for people over 70. Remember that, Dan? We had a couple of people who were looking to do some estate planning, buy some life insurance, solve some state taxes, and so I think, and those are usually where the high life insurance policy values are. So I think that's what probably brought the average down, but they had a lot of younger people buying, but they still saw a massive increase in sales.
I'm not sure if this was the thought process for those younger folks, but I think it's a benefit that they're going to certainly have secured for themselves. And, and we'd advise people, regardless of age, to consider is that with this whole COVID thing, some people will get sick with it, ultimately end up with these lingering conditions and these diagnoses that'll be with them forever in their medical records. So when you buy life insurance, even if you don't necessarily need it for the death benefit in the time in which you bought it, you just got to remember and be aware of the fact that you're securing your health rating forever, essentially, in that policy. So if you buy it before you've been diagnosed or before insurance companies figure out any changes in the mortality table related to these lingering effects of COVID, you're already locked in there.
One of a life insurance guy I used to know, Roger. He used to say, ensuring your insurability. He used to say, he's like, I sell term to everybody under the sun. And he used to say that all the time. Nice old guy. And he's no longer with us on this earth. But, he said, you're just ensuring your insurability. He's like, I sell every 25 or 30-year-old, it was like $500,000 policy 20 years ago, whatever it was he was selling, $1 million. It's cheap, but you can always convert it. You've always got the ability to stay insured, and you never know when a health change is going to happen. And I saw the value in that, but I definitely see the value in that today more than ever, and it's obviously showing in the statistics.
Probably most of those people were jumping into the market out of fear of dying because of COVID, or something along those lines.
That's an astounding number here. 45% of millennials say that they're more likely to buy life insurance because of COVID. And one of those great points that you raised right there was, probably for about the cost of a couple cups of coffee at Starbucks, go ahead and put something in place that definitely either get used, but could also have some better insurability down the road. We're hopefully going to get into an article here. This is Brian Sosi that brings us the Warren Buffett gave this investing tip to NFL defenseman Ndamukong Suh. Ndamukong Suh, it's a Portland, Oregon story. That's an NFL player. He met up with Warren Buffett in Omaha, Nebraska, because that's where Ndamukong Suh played his college ball. And since then, he has developed a friendship. Warren Buffett has given him some fantastic advice, and he's been investing with Warren Buffett for years. But one of my favorite pieces here was just the focus, that long-term focus and sticking with the plan and giving it time.
Yeah, I also thought it was interesting that one of the pieces that came out of this was focusing on the people. I would probably expand that conversation inside of this article to be the people in the company. There's a sense of like positivity about a company. When negativity kind of starts surrounding the company, there's an illness, a sickness. That's kind of a buyer beware. There was an EV stock that got some negativity, and it was still probably a good EV company. But I totally dumped the stock and have avoided it since because I really felt like the negativity was a crash and burn story long term. I think it has more validity and more relevance than probably the article portrayed here in my perspective of how I look at equity purchases.
You know, when you're hearing stories about multi-millionaire athletes and their finances, it's usually a horror story, right? Because they've burned through all the money.
No, come on, Dan. What are you talking about?
They need to come work with Brishaw Financial. but he was kind of focused in on, at an early age, in generational wealth. You know, he knew that he'd had this fantastic opportunity due to his athletic gifts, but the career would likely be short. And, you know, he'd had this fantastic opportunity to meet with Buffett and start up a friendship there. So, you know, whether it was of his own volition or the guidance he got, you know, he began early in doing the right thing with the money.
Yeah.
And there's a comment in the article about, you know, he wanted to set up his children and, you know, their children after them. And he knew he had that ability, but he didn't want to just hand them cash. He didn't just want to hand them a portfolio. You know, he makes reference in there to buying property. He says, well, it's hard to spend a building.
Right.
You know, once he's acquired the wealth and passed it on and he's long gone from here, you know, his focus is in that generational sense. Like, hey, I'm going to set these kids up with assets, but it's going to be assets that, you know, regardless of what turns they take in life, it's going to be hard for them to just waste.
I thought that was also very, very good. The real estate pieces. I like real estate as an investment. I think there's a strong place for it. Maybe you're not the landlord type, but there are other ways to get solid, good exposure to real estate that we help manage for people too.
Well, that's going to do it for us with Money in the News. You're listening to Money on Tap, and you can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. Folks, there's a lot of opportunities to connect with us and lots of reasons why you might want to. We have webinars that we're doing which are focused on Social Security, income, or, you know, your taxes in retirement. Lots of appropriate information and ways to, you know, build your education and your understanding around retirement. You can get a hold of us again at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. We are talking about today, no pension, no problem. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Folks, it is so much fun for us to bring you Money on Tap. My name is Seth Krussman, and I am one of the hosts here at Money on Tap. I'm also a financial planner. That's what we do. That's what Ben and I do. And the fun part is we get to have this radio show. We talk about important things that we think you need to listen to and be aware of to help raise the bar as far as your financial literacy. It's a big part of what we're trying to do here. The other thing that we're doing here as well, as financial planners, we are welcoming you to come and call us and to join us at Brishaw Financial Group. Experience what complete wealth management looks like. Let's take a look at all sides of the issue, get a three-dimensional perspective, and put a plan around your next step. It's so critical. And so many people just leave this part out and then they find out later, oh, if I only would have known. Hey, don't let that be your story. Give us a call at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. If you have $250,000 of investable assets today, our plan is free to you. We think it's important for you to know the facts and have a playbook so you can have a successful retirement. Give us a call at 855-226-8551.
Now back to Money on Tap with Ben, Seth, and Dan.
You're listening to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. Today we're talking about no pension, no problem. To get us kicked off here right now, if you have an annuity, believe it or not, we're going to wind up talking a little bit about annuities in this whole thing. But if you have an annuity, one of the things that we want to make sure you know is that you have an opportunity to have a review, a free review of that annuity. Contact us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. And one of the things that's likely is that when you bought it, it was a great idea. You really felt like you had a grasp of what this was going to do or accomplish, but maybe you just don't remember, or it didn't really even resonate with you. That review will allow you an opportunity to understand better how this is going to work for your retirement, or if it's not, and if there's some other option for you, you can become educated about that as well. That's one of the things that we just want to make sure that you know you have access to with us at Brayshaw Financial Group. And with that, no pension, no problem. Ben, what do you got for us today?
That was a good intro there, Seth. We just did a show on 7 potential types of pensions or income programs for yourself in retirement. We just came out of that show. We've talked about that for a few weeks, and we understand there's lots of ways people can drive income from different types of asset classes and investment programs. But the no pension, no problem conversation is a little bit bigger, I think, across the board for a lot of people because everyone's working. They don't understand necessarily all the moving pieces and the parts and what's going on in the world around them. All they see is who people are retired and people who are going to retire. And the people who are retired, things look good and they're traveling and they're maybe doing this, well, maybe not with COVID, but they have this kind of sense of the glory of retirement. Now, we've talked about the percentage of people who see retirement as a possibility versus people who don't, and we've talked a lot of things. So there's a lot of people hearing this show from a lot of different perspectives, and we understand that. And the idea of no pension, no problem is the conversation around kind of this deteriorating foundational pension income story that exists in retirement for a lot of newcomers to retirement. It also exists for people who have just retired or retired and are finding themselves dealing with inflation and not having enough substantial income or retirement income. I have this conversation, we all do, with people every day on some level that, Social Security is not worth what it used to be. We have the conversation that I don't have a pension like my dad did, or my friend over there has a pension, but, they stopped contributing to the pension at that company 10 years ago, and it's not what, existed or was expected to be. And we've talked about the vulnerability, in the 2014 Multi-Employer Pension Reform Act in the past a number of times about the viability of your employer, one, maintaining the pension that they have if you have one, and being able to pay, and it not being reduced mathematically on you like it has for people throughout the country that you're not aware of. And so we go back to this kind of historical conversation, and I, you guys know, the reason that Mike was turned over to me is because I say this stuff all the time. There's kind of this corporate conversation, and I found this article, Dan found this article, but I want to quote the article from the Wall Street Journal. It's Turn Your 401k into a Pension Plan is the title of the article by Randy Myers. And the first paragraph reads this, and Randy, I appreciate you writing this because this really communicates it well, and it's nice coming from a strong source. When 401k plans began replacing pensions as the primary retirement plan in corporate America, millions of Americans lost something valuable. The opportunity to supplement their Social Security benefits with a guaranteed monthly pension check. Now, the financial services industry is developing workarounds that make it cheaper and easier to convert your 401k balance into a guaranteed stream of income once you retire, much like what you would get from a traditional pension plan. And what those are just annuities. Straight up, that's just what it is. And these programs, you see Fidelity, it talks about the green line, follow the green line, and that's all conversion at Fidelity into a Fidelity annuity. So as much as these companies have bashed annuities for 15, 20 years, they decided to turn the channel and, oops, this is an area we really do need to provide for people. I would say, Dan, you and I, we were just talking about it a minute ago, the idea that Social Security is just running out of money. It says in 2034 or 33, it depends on, which week of the month of the day or the hour that you talk to somebody about Social Security, but they're reporting about running out of it too. And so our whole concept of, no pension, no problem over the next few shows, we're going to talk about not only the the concept of the 7 different types of pension-like investment programs you can do, but how they're utilized, how you mechanically work through those, how you can apply those to your life, and how you can deal with this kind of overarching decline in the pension world and what's being provided by employers.
Yeah, there's no doubt that retirement's changing, and there was a point in time when pensions were relied upon by the majority of retirees. But the fact of the matter is, as of today, is only about 20% of people are able to actively participate in a pension as an option. And if you exclude government work and municipalities and union work, it drops down to about 4%. So for the vast majority of people who aren't employed in one of those settings, the traditional pension simply doesn't exist, or it's no longer there for you to contribute. So the opportunity does exist, though, to build your own in a way. Social Security being a foundational piece of that for as long as it lasts. But you want to stack these other assets on top of that as well. And the beauty of annuity in that setting is that it's the only other one that we can point to that we can truly say provides a guaranteed lifetime income. And that's the part of it that is critical to the long-term plan. As long as you're alive, you need some predictable means of income and level of income. And this is a tool that can simply do that for you.
Yeah, when you guys are talking about building a lifetime income, the landscape has changed for sure, right? There's been the pension programs that you're talking about going away. There's been a lot of pressure, a ton of pressure on those pension programs, even if you are working for municipalities, Oregon being one of them. It's the numbers are staggering when you take a look at how underfunded these are and how the underperformance of these assets has really put them in a bind. And talking about creating that lifetime income and what are some of the benefits and why would you want to have something like an annuity in place or some other kind of an income program, it's really fascinating to find out how people engage around income. Right? Because so many people that are going into retirement have had, a salary or, they've worked so many hours and they get a dollar amount that they bring home, but it's fairly consistent most of the time. That's the way we tend to orient ourselves around our finances. And using efficient vehicles like equities, or those are stocks or stock-like kind of assets and bonds, is a great way to accumulate. And that's part of the story, but when you get into retirement or an income mode, people don't do as well with inconsistencies in their income as I think they hoped that they might, or the realization is very different when, rubber meets the road.
Yeah, Seth, there's a great point inside there that, to bring that more to the forefront is like you have the accumulation phase of your life, and then you have that distribution phase of your life. And the problem that I see is that people live in this misnomer that, hey, listen, I'm making this regular income at work every day, and I've been watching my 401k balance grow, and now they're going to stop working, and they're somehow going to transition into some sort of efficient trader or investor that's going to now translate all of those assets that they've just been kind of ignoring. Not that they haven't been watching them, but not really trading on a daily basis to even understand how to mechanically handle that. And they're going to turn that into a lifetime solution where there's a chance you could live, 33 years in retirement. You're going to convert, basically probably the average person's like 30 to 35 years of savings in retirement to another 33 years of potential income and be successful at it when this industry is probably as complex as you can get. I think that's the piece that people don't really understand how the translation works there. And I would honestly tell you that I would think that the communication of a 401k is the slyest move by corporate America that's ever occurred. I think it was aggressive, intentional. I think they sold it to Americans across the board that, hey, this 401k is going to empower you. we're going to give you that pension is such an old thing. That's a grandpa story. Like that's what grandparents have. And we've been holding them back with these pensions, but we're going to give you the whole stock market where you could make rip-roaring returns. And, we're not going to let the reins loose and these horses are just going to run through the stock market and you're going to be super wealthy. And I mean, they sold it to us good and everyone bought it hook, line and sinker. And you got to have that 401k and why would I want a pension? And now you hit retirement. You're like, my goodness, I really need some sort of stable income like my grandfather. And you know what? I found out that my emotional decisions in the market really didn't perform as well because I sold when the market dropped and I bought when the market was rising instead of the reverse. And that was really a problem. Going back to that Wall Street Journal article, one of the lines I highlighted in here is how to distribute the money that you've accumulated in your retirement account is just as important, and it's been largely unaddressed. I think that is the piece that is missing in people walking out the door with retirement. And they sit down with somebody and there's this fear. And we have articles here. I mean, Dan's got 20 articles lying in front of him. I got 10 on my computer. They're from Barron's. They're from, multiple ones from Wall Street, Market Watch, NerdWall, you name it, right? We've got, and everyone out there is talking about this historical change that everyone's realizing. That pensions have slowly slid off the table and they're not part of people walking into retirement. And yet everyone's looking and saying, how do I solve this problem? Because they swallowed the 401k sales story. Now, I don't really blame corporate America personally for like trashing pensions and saying, here, let's give you the 401k. We'll put all the onus on your success for retirement on you instead of IBM or GE or all these companies. They don't want to own it. They're not in the financial world.
Yeah, it's the difference between defined contribution and defined benefit, which is kind of complicated language, but it's much easier for an employer to understand their risk and liability and cost when they're matching your contribution on the front end, right? That's defined. They know exactly what that's going to cost them. It's going to cost them money today and never again. People are excited about a match, and match is a fantastic thing, and we always recommend everybody contribute up to the point in which you get matched at the very least.
Absolutely.
It's truly free money, but it's a stark difference from an employer having to take on paying someone for the remainder of their life. The pension concept worked when companies presumed they would always be growing and there'd always be more workers coming in. But the fact of the matter is most of these companies employ less people and less people over time. So there's less salary out there for them to chip away at and contribute into this fund for everybody. So you end up in a situation much like Social Security has. When Social Security was rolled out, there was 33 employees to everyone taking that pension. Right. Now it's down to 3 to 1.
Right. And I just heard that the birth rate for last year was the lowest in history in
so
America.
There's fewer people entering the workforce and will be over time. And, and one other thing, Ben was talking about, 401ks and for people who watch their statements and we work with people all the time who do. And, I've had a 401k. I did the same thing. When you're working, it always feels like it's growing, right? So every time you look at the statement every month or every quarter, every year, whatever it is, the number keeps going up. And you're always patting yourself on the back, and that feels good, and it's psychologically comforting. But what you got to understand is some portion, maybe all, of that money going in there, and why the statement's growing is because you're contributing to it.
You still could be losing money, though.
You could still be losing money, right? But with the day you retire, the contributions cease.
Yeah.
Right. So now you got a flat balance, and you got to make it last.
That's a great point. And I think when we start talking about, all the different pieces of, finding success in retirement, it's the emotional side of the market that is the most difficult for every novice investor to manage. I mean, it happens all day long. Like when the stock market starts tanking, we're all like, oh goodness, what's going to happen tomorrow? When every, Tom, Dick, and Harry gets out there and says, oh, my portfolio moved 3%. And I'm out. I can't do it. 2008 all over again. I think, the thing that I would say to every investor that's listening today you walk through the door. Not everything in our world is an annuity pitch, but I will tell you that when we look at markets and we look at investments, we use stocks, bonds, and ETFs and so forth every day. I mean, we hardly use mutual funds, but I mean, that's prerogative of the investor. But we do use annuities as a foundational element for a lot of people who want security. Security is a commonplace. It's not for all your money. It's not even for a vast majority of your money. It's literally to solve a problem. And I thought it was interesting. I was reading in one article where a person had $1 million. They took half the money, and it was a Wall Street Journal article, I believe. Had $1 million, and they were saying, put $500,000 in here, and pay fees and riders and joint lifetime income. It was like $27,000 of income, plus joint Social Security. It put the people at over $75,000. Well, they still had $500,000 in investments that they were still taking income from on top of it, but they had a $75,000, guaranteed lifetime income, and that's something that's not nothing in today's world. I mean, that solves a lot of problems for people in retirement. In the early 2000s, I would talk to people, even post, 2001 market crash, 9/11, all that stuff, right? I mean, all those horrible experiences. I would talk to people about taking a portion of their money and using an annuity. Annuities back then, remember, Dan? They were just like, I mean, you can't buy any of those anymore. They were just so rich and in favor of the client. It was unbelievable. Most of them are, I just think about ING, who used to exist in the annuity world, and they sold these guarantees, and those guarantees still exist for clients. But there was people that would just be like, not a chance would I ever buy one of those. And it wasn't their grandfather or grandma's annuity that took all their money, and all this stuff that people would talk about was crazy. These are legitimate investment programs. 2005, 6, 7 came along. I'd have people, the market's rising, massive money, right? Real estate is, people who are listening are just thinking through this process. Real estate was skyrocketing. You could sell it just like now, right? Real estate skyrocketing, markets at all-time highs. We're looking at crazy numbers. I had people laugh me out of the room talking about, take a portion of the money off the table, stick it in an annuity, buy a lifetime income for retirement. 07, right? Baby boomers are starting to retire. This is a pinnacle period. Baby boomers are starting to retire in 2008. Guess what? Stock market crash. And there's still people who sold at the bottom of that stock market that have never recovered their value, even today. We meet people even today that they're still scared from the emotional impact because they just sold out because they couldn't afford to lose it all in their mind. Having had people laugh me out of the room and knowing that there's people out there that have hit horrible experiences. I know people who had all GM bonds. Look where bonds have gone. Look what happened to GM over that time period, right? Those things had to go worthless. They voided all those things. His whole retirement was in bonds. He said he couldn't live off of anything but the yield that those were getting. They were getting over 11%. I was like, you have to get out. You can't just have one company. He's like, GM's not going anywhere. Nothing's happening. I have stories of just actually, I really feel like God had put them in my life to have these experiences, to share that wisdom with other people. But I have clients that listen to me that bought annuities just pre-market crash. And yeah, they experience market, but they have lifetime income. Some of those have death benefits that are a return of principal at death. There's things out there that are features that you can engage in that people have enjoyed and benefited from because they were entering retirement. And as you had said, Dan, they were no longer collecting that income. And they were no longer adding to that 401k. And they just watched it tumble in front of their eyes. And so we're at all-time highs. Real estate is climbing. The story is getting bigger. And you know what? You're one of 120 million Americans standing in front of the door of retirement. Because if you're listening to this and you're thinking about retirement, there's 120 million Americans going to be retired over the next 20 years. And you have one chance to do this right. And I think the story today is the idea that you're not equipped to do it right by yourself. If you're listening today, it's not that we're trying to scare you into it. It's just that you have only one shot. And if it's a 2008 walking around the door in the next, if 2022 is just a repeat of 2008, our sequence of return videos that we talk about on our website at Brayshaw Financial will explain to you about the vulnerability of walking into retirement in a down market. Now, I hope 2022 is going to be good. And, we like energy and we like financials, and we're in this kind of space in general. We have exposure to semiconductors and the S&P 500, but we know how to mitigate and weather some of those storms for that type of money. But when it comes to guaranteed security, you got one chance. And I would tell you that before we take a break here, that this is the time to consider whether you have the foundational elements in your portfolio and whether you're capable enough to manage through that and whether you need a bigger foundation. And I'll leave it with that.
Hey, that was a great place to put a pin in it. You're listening to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. We're talking about no pension, no problem today. And gosh, I'm excited about the next phase of this show. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
For a number of our listeners, they have a lot of questions, and you might be one of them. Today, we're just offering what we call Zoominars, webinars over Zoom meeting rooms where we have top experts, Social Security, estate planning, and financial planning experts for you to speak with, do a private consultation that way today. We're also having webinar-based Zoominars where we're going to have multiple groups where you can be part of that and enjoy that as well. Give us a call at 855-226-8551 or email us at info@yourmoneyontap.com to schedule your Zoominar.
Now back to Money on Tap with Ben, Seth, and Dan.
Welcome back. You're listening to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. And we are talking about no pension, no problem. Going to get into some of the meat of the show here with you guys. For starters, what is this problem? What is the dilemma in retirement? Right? Your transition from having an income that you understand pretty well, you're working with it in your current budget, to a completely different, in most cases, completely different source of income. And traditionally, what's been happening in that story, while you've been going to work and putting your money away in the 401k and growing these assets over here, is now that you've kind of got this, call it, pile of money over here, how are you going to use that to create income? And a very traditional approach here is for starters, and this is still it's a valid way to create income. Don't take me the wrong way here. What is this? It's bonds. Bonds has been traditionally a much more stable asset class than equities, stocks, and what that has provided is a yield or a coupon or a ticket. It's the payout that has happened from these bonds month after month that has created income for retirees. Now, what is the challenge right now around this? If we want to just pull back the curtain here, it is that yield is dependent on interest rates. And if you've been paying attention to interest rates, or let's just say you've been out, refinancing a house, buying a new house, it's been wonderful for most people to go and do these things because the interest rates have been so low. However, one of the things that has coincided with this is that those traditional bonds no longer are providing the kind of income that they did to, your aunt and uncle, your mom and dad, the investors before us, or some of them even still today in retirement and trying to find other ways to create income. And so with yields as low as they are, and those, coupon payments as low as they are, trying to find a sufficient supplement to be able to not spend down your nest egg that you've worked so hard to acquire, or to live long into retirement with a kind of a freedom. We'll talk about more around income and freedom and how that really works here. But that is the dilemma here is just because interest rates are so low, the CD at the bank is so low, it just doesn't really work the way that it used to. So a lot of people that are very comfortable in that space trying to create an alternative income have taken a look at the market and said, well, there's dividends. That's one place, right? You have large cap companies that produce some kind of a dividend yield and pay you quarterly or monthly or whatever they do. But those are adjustable. For the most part, maybe they are very consistent, but they're not necessarily a guarantee. And so there's that story working in the background. Whether you take a look at it and you feel it every day, it's still there. And it does affect how you live in retirement. Whether you think it does or not, it does. So it's not a one size fits all or a one stop shop to be able to just hack into your retirement income from your nest egg. But this is it. This is the problem that we're going to be talking about, and that's why we talk about no pension, no problem. That's why we talk here at Brayshaw Financial Group and Money on Tap is three-dimensional investing, because you have to be willing to be successful. You have to be willing to take a look at and try to understand what is this problem and what ways do we have to solve our income problem.
Yeah, and one of the other, kind of the secondary issue there is you have an income problem in terms of how you create it and what's efficient and where can you capture the best rate relative to the amount of risk you need to take on. Kind of the second issue is life expectancy, right? So you have to find a way to efficiently create the income, but the great unknown, as complicated as finding it is, well, how long does it need to last for? Because that's something none of us know, right? How long are we going to be here? And when you're an individual investor doing it on your own, out of your own account, essentially, that's a risk you're bearing entirely on your own. So at some point in time, you may run out of money. You may not, but that's going to depend essentially on how long you live. The commonality between pensions and annuities and why it works so well in this particular realm is that in both circumstances, whoever the provider is, whether it's your employer, former employer, or an insurance company, is you're not participating alone. You are being bundled into a group with thousands of other people. All right, likely thousands, depends on the size of the pension program or the insurance company, but you're not alone. So what they're able to do is not look at your individual single account and trying to determine how long you live, because obviously that's impossible for them to do. But when they're looking at several thousand people together and just trying to average the life expectancy amongst that group, that's easy for them to do. Some people will live long, some people will live short. They already know going into it what the average is of that total pool. So they're able to make that guarantee to you in either sense about giving you an income for life, because they know some people will live long and they'll essentially lose in those deals. Some people will die sooner, where they get to limit the amount of payments they need to make. But on average, they know what that number is for everybody. And, in some of the pieces we're looking at right now, if you're 65 years old and you jump into participating in one of these programs, the average is 21 years. They know this, right? So they can take that total pool of asset that they have in their hands, everybody's individual money, add it together, and determine, what's a reasonable rate that we can pay to all of these people, make sure it lasts forever for each one of these participants, or as long as they're alive, and minimize their risk so that you can feel confident in the fact that they're going to be around to make those payments to you. So it's something called the law of large numbers that we deal with often on the insurance side of the world. But, it's critically important as an individual to consider that and know, when you're trying to evaluate, well, I have this amount of money, can I divide it up and make it last? It's hard to do the division when you don't know what the divisor is, right? So how many years is it that you need it for?
Yeah, I think Dan, when you talk about that, I think that's such a hard concept for a lot of people to grasp. I mean, everyone knows, I don't know if I'm going to live to 85 or 95, and no one knows that because their dad passed. Like my dad died young at a heart attack. My mom, was killed in a car accident. So, like I don't have a lot of. I mean, I know what happened to their parents, and so forth. But I don't know what my life looks like. And there's a lot of people out there, and then there's people out there saying, "Well, my parents did die a little early, and they had some health events, but technology and healthcare is so expansively larger and capable of mitigating health. So, are you the person that's going to live to 100? And, what was it? Betty White, right? She just passed away at 99. And, if you're married, two people married over 65, there's like a 25% chance one of you is going to live to over 100. That's an enormous percentage.
It's incredible.
And so when you start thinking about money lasting 33 years, right, potentially to that, or even longer, depending on how old you are to retire, maybe it's 35 years, or maybe it's 40 years. I mean, then you start getting into the law of those numbers and realizing that there's all these positional pieces of, how am I going to not run out of money? Am I part of that people? No one wants to be that story, but no one wants to die at 75 or 70, for the most part, right? So from a financial perspective, dying young is lucky. from a non-financial perspective, or dying, from a financial perspective, living a long life financially is not a lucky scenario unless you're super wealthy. And with the number of people that are really financially prepared for retirement, that lifetime income story is so super important. All of this brings us right into, point number 3 here, which is, and we breezed over this, was the emotional investment piece. Like how do you manage the emotional sectors involved in managing the money? There's a lot of people who are trying to do it themselves, just saving costs and fees. Totally respect and understand that. But if you're in a financially vulnerable space, probably not a good decision. I think, Seth, we were chatting with a gentleman out your way. He's worth a considerable amount of money. And he has more than enough money. He doesn't even know what to do with all of it. He's trying to figure out how to give it to family, right? And he's trying to, all of those pieces, and that's great. But he still is hiring people to mitigate all those financial issues because he doesn't feel qualified to do it himself. So, even the super wealthy who have the money more than enough to survive and live are still looking for support. I find it to be the person who's kind of like on the cusp of having enough money and not, that is the person who's trying to be the self-doer, who some of them will make it through fine, and you may be a listener that is going to do okay. But some people aren't. And you don't know if you are or aren't until the day you pass away. I had a client pass away this week at 92 years old. Maybe it's a client, he's a friend, honestly. And talking with his family this week, it's just a horrible scenario. And, they were very thankful for all that we've done, and they have enough money. They're okay, and you want that to be your story. And the emotional bias of how you handle your own money is just too convoluted. Like, Dan, how many times have I brought my portfolio to you and said, hey, do you see something I don't see? Because I'm, too tied into a stock personally. When I'm looking at other people's portfolios, I'll buy and sell stocks that I'm holding, So it's not uncommon. You're not alone in that. And I don't want to put ourselves on a pedestal, because I need help too, right? I mean, I go to Dan, I go to Seth, and we talk about these things, and I'm like, hey, listen, what do you think? Seth just a few minutes ago said, what are you buying?
I lost money on Amazon myself. It's like the only guy in the world that ever did that. But luckily I didn't sell my clients. But
Which is funny, because we were just talking about it. He's like, yeah, I think it's up. I've got a better place to put the money. And we were laughing about it. It's like, yeah, you'll be the only guy who chose to lose money on Amazon. But those are, you're making investments. So you're not alone in the emotional bias piece, and that's okay. And I think that brings it to a head on that story piece. So number 4, market returns. You guys want to take this together?
Yeah. All right. So the market, I guess that's it. I'm going to grab it and go. The market, it's the primary place where you have, or people have, relied on a story of growth for their assets, that compound interest that works so well most of the time is coming from the market. And we talked about, a little bit ago, the pool of money. You've grown it, the 401k. Now you've got this pool of money that you're somehow going to try to figure out how to take the income at the right time, at, a consistent time, and do it without having a compounding loss, or a sequence of returns is, what we call that. When the market's down, you take the money out because, hey, I got to live. I'm going to take the money from my pool over here. So that's that sequence of returns. And when you have been dollar cost averaging into the market, and remember the 401k, how good that felt, whether there was a return on it or not, it just kept growing because I kept on putting money in. Well, that same thing happens in a market. As you're taking money out, it goes up, it goes down, but the way that it affects your portfolio, or it's the durability of your portfolio, is catastrophic if you aren't doing it in the appropriate way. And most people aren't. Is just the fact of it is, you need the money, you take the money. So, bonds has been kind of that lever in the background. It has been working so well in the past, but without there being enough income from those, how do you build that stability? What do you do? And it is, for the most cases, we're going to talk about lots of other ways, but for the most places, it is an annuity piece. It is having a durable portfolio that has a component in it, like a pension, that an annuity can provide, so that you're not experiencing a sequence of returns, that negative sequence of returns for yourself.
Seth, I one time I sat down with a client and I said to them, to explain sequence of returns, if I told you that you can take 1% from your investment portfolio every year and live off of it, would you believe we could do that with like 99% certainty that you wouldn't run out of money? And they said, yes, I could believe that. And I said, what about 2%? And they said, yeah, I think so. And we had 3 and 4, 5. We started asking questions, 6. The answers got a little bit more vague, right? And so it's like, well, you're averaging maybe 7, 8, 9, 10% over the last X number of years. Why is it that you can't take out those numbers statistically and not run the risk of running out of money? And that's what sequence of returns is. I mean, taking 1% out, really no risk, right? But no one can live off of 1%. So how do you do that? And, the Wall Street Journal article, that we referenced earlier, they talk about the idea that, it's hard to get the percentage of distribution that's guaranteed for your life out from an investment portfolio the way the annuity companies can do that for you, for a husband and wife, and bring that security. And that's where the market and the annuities collide into becoming a solution for people.
Folks, it's been a pleasure spending some time with you today talking about no pension, no problem. You could spend your time any way you choose, and we recognize that you've chosen to spend it with us, and we're very grateful. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. You've been listening to Money on Tap, and we can't wait to meet up with you again next week.
The views expressed are not necessarily the opinion of this radio station and should not be construed directly or indirectly as an offer to buy or sell any securities mentioned herein. Investing is subject to risks, including loss of principal invested. No strategy, product, material, or tool mentioned can assure a profit nor protect against loss. Please note that individual situations can vary. Therefore, the information, products, materials, or tools mentioned should be relied upon when coordinated with individual professional advice. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. This show may be subsidized in whole or in part by a product sponsor or issuer. Securities and advisory services offered through SagePoint Financial Incorporated, member FINRA SIPC, and a registered investment advisor. All other services offered through Brayshaw Financial Group LLC are independent of SagePoint Financial. SagePoint Financial and Brayshaw Financial Group do not provide tax or legal advice. Main office is located at 116 South River Road, Bedford, New Hampshire, 03110, and can be reached at toll-free 855-226-8551. All guarantees protections are subject to the claims paying ability of the issuing insurance company. Mutual funds and variable annuities are sold by prospectus. Please consider the investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses carefully before investing. The prospectus, which contains this and other information about the mutual fund and the variable annuity contract and underlying funds, can be obtained from your financial professional. Be sure to read the prospectus carefully before deciding whether to invest. Fixed annuities are insurance products and are designed for long-term retirement income. Annuity guarantees are subject to the claims-paying ability of the insurance company. Surrender charges may apply if money is withdrawn before the end of the surrender period. All withdrawals of tax-deferred earnings are subject to current income tax, and if made prior to age 59 and a half, may also be subject to a 10% federal income tax penalty. Annuities generally contain fees and charges which include, but are not limited to, sales and surrender charges. Additionally, if purchased within a qualified plan, an annuity will provide no further tax deferral features. The contract, when redeemed, may be worth more or less than the amount used to purchase the annuity. Fixed annuities are contracts, and you should read and understand the contract before making a purchasing decision. All other benefits are available for an additional cost. It is important to weigh the costs against the benefits when adding such options to an annuity contract. An income rider or benefit, sometimes called Guaranteed Lifetime Withdrawal Benefits, or GLWB, is an additional feature available with some annuities and generally optional and comes with additional cost. Income benefits are designed to provide income options above and beyond the standard annuitization or free withdrawal features in annuities.
Well, bye.